And what time was he? 8:47.
There was.
I said, I told you, Sarah, don't. She wouldn't leave.
There was one day he was supposed to. He came over to the training center. He was supposed to be there like 12:45. Should have been noon. Nobody was like none of the athletes. I was.
So I want them muted though, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Like, the one time you're
So I was just ready to go. So I can go.
We had 3 kids in the room.
Okay. So, actually, Tony, if we're gonna be over here, I want them to be able to see me. Should I turn the monitor? If we're gonna be over here, should I turn the monitor?
If you want to see the people, there is looking out that camera, so depending on how much you're going to stand, it's a pretty wide angle camera. It's a pretty wide angle.
Okay, okay. There's the birthday boy. Use that as part of my intro.
Athletic trainers have a
Hi, Nemo.
degree in athletics.
Bye.
Credential. Athletic trainers practice under the direction of a physician. As a part of the healthcare team, athletic trainers coordinate and communicate regularly with a wide range of other healthcare professionals. Athletic trainers are required to participate in continuing education annually to keep their skills and knowledge up to date. Athletic trainers are most often seen
Not giving me the co-host ability.
alongside sports teams at the high school, college, and professional
I was
level.
gonna say the same. I was thinking the same thing.
Including hospitals and clinics, public safety,
Tim, you want me to admit?
the military,
Anybody?
and performing arts.
Okay.
Athletic trainers are often confused with personal or fitness trainers. There are important differences between the two professions. Athletic trainers are medical professionals that provide emergency care and planning, as well as injury assessment and treatment. They possess at least a bachelor's degree, and they work in a variety of healthcare settings.
Nemo, you get a ride Friday?
Yeah.
Personal trainers assess fitness needs and develop exercise programs to help clients achieve their strength, conditioning, and other fitness goals. They work in health clubs, gyms, and wellness centers, and they may or may not have a degree in health sciences. For more information on what athletic trainers do and how they serve the athlete population, visit the National Athletic Trainers Association website at www.nata.org. To find out more about the athletic trainers at Say Sports Network, make sure to visit our website.
Yeah, North.
Say Sports Network is your source for youth sports safety information.
Holy smokes.
Supported by the
Get
community.
the defibrillator.
If you would like to donate, visit our website.
Elvis has entered the building.
Sponge.
It's almost as big as Michael Knight and Ray Snell and Saranac Lake.
Dr. Stewart?
But I did stay at Holiday Inn Express last night.
We'll see how things go up this year.
My name is Christina Farley. I have been with Orange County Public Schools for 34 years as a teacher athletic trainer.
All right, so good morning. This is my care and prevention class. We're going to use this today, so if you don't have it, I'll get you some more copies if you weren't here.
I have class second and third period.
And how many cranial bones are there? 8. It's telling you right there, big bold letters, right? And then how many facial bones? 14. Great. And then after third, I do attendance. Calls from here because it's quiet here. And then I pack up my stuff and I walk back over to the gym office and I get ready for lunch. All right, so we're gonna ice that again like we did yesterday. Keep taking your medication as it was prescribed by your doctor. And you see the result already, right? This was 30 minutes to work with them, so it's quick, maybe 5 or 6. Maybe none. And then we have 25 minutes in between for our lunch. Kelsey, my assistant athletic trainer, comes in and helps with lunchtime treatments from her classroom. And then we do A and B lunch treatments, and then she goes back to class. And then my next 2 periods, I'm doing the paperwork part of it. My
My name is Molly Fitzgerald. I'm the athletic trainer at Boone High School. I've been here for 8 years. This is my 8th year. And I'm now going to show you what the second half of the day of athletic trainers look like. It is about 2:10 in the afternoon, so we're going to be getting ready for the afternoon rush. The afternoon rush is all the athletes getting ready for practice, getting evaluated. We did not see them during the school day. Concussion clearances, our concussion protocol. And right now we're in the beginning of all spring sports, so there's a ton of athletes coming in and trying to get cleared, get the paperwork to get cleared, and just general information.
How many athletes do you think you
I
see?
also saw that downtown with no training.
Between 20 and 30 on the given day.
So
Now we're taking this outside. We're going to take this out to the golf cart, load it up in the golf cart, and then we'll drive out to the field and set up. All right, so we are on our way out to set up for the soccer games tonight. That's a JV and varsity girls game versus Toledo. We are basically kind of here and on call if anyone needs anything. It's always a good night when we are bored. So if nothing's happening, that is a fantastic night. So once the game is over, if anyone needs anything, we'll pass them down, do whatever needs to be done with parents, drive them to the cars if needed, and then we just pack everything up. So everything we brought out, the water coolers, ice, take it back inside to the athletic training room, clean it up, pack it away, go home.
When you're ready, pause it anyway. Can I just take that for 1 second?
Yep.
Pause it here. I just want to actually.
I'm ready to do whatever you want to do.
Oh, it should be right. Can you turn it on there? Oh, start video. Start video. Yep, there it is.
All right.
All right, that's there. So there's your thing right here. That's what you look like. This is all set. This is the streaming from the Zoom, sharing the monitor. You're good to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I'm close to this.
Role in keeping athletes and physically active people healthy.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to the main event. Can you guys hear me okay out back? Okay. Can you see me all right? Can you see the screen? All right. Good. What the heck was that? Dog was
Someone did not hear.
So the topic of this presentation is athletic trainers in secondary schools. Basically, the question is who's providing health care to our high school athletes. First of all, I want to say thank you to Lake Placid Central School for hosting us. Tim, Joe, Taylor, and Tony, the IT support. We're pulling off I think way above my head technological event here. We're live streaming, recording. It's a mess. Kirk Sullivan, a friend of mine, will help me edit some video that's going to be in this presentation. The video is actually an 18-minute ESPN Outside the Line video entitled Matt Mangine, the In Action Plan, about a 60-year-old soccer player who passed away in June of 2020 during conditioning in soccer. That's kind of probably the cornerstone of this presentation. It revolves around that preparedness to respond to medical issues. Kerry Blinn, my technical PowerPoint coordinator from the hospital. Kerry, thank you very much. John Muldowney. If any of you know John Muldowney is a friend of mine. He's a lawyer. If you ask for his opinion, be careful. He's going to give it to you. He watched this PowerPoint presentation. We went through it, just kind of went through the slides. He says, I don't like this, I don't like that. Try this, try that. So I made some changes and some I didn't. He'll watch the recorded version. We'll see how he feels. Thank you for coming, for not making my last 3 months a colossal waste of time. The goal, full disclosure, I'm not promoting our service directly to provide athletic training to every school in the North Country, but you'll see in one of the slides that there's a huge gap in athletic training in the state of New York, and especially the North Country. And those schools have hockey and football and no athletic training. So they're hoping that there's a doctor in the crowd in the audience if something happens. Ultimately, I'd love to see a full-time athletic trainer in every high school. It's an ultimate goal. At the very least, let's get some part-time athletic trainers covering major events that we need covered. We'll also discover the importance of the emergency action plan and rehearsal. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail, who does what in those emergency situations. FYI here, the AED is upstairs by the office. Emergency exits there and there.
So our purpose for why we're here tonight, we're going to discuss what an athletic trainer is, our role, and all in all, how can we help our student athletes the best. We want to discuss a bit about how we handle different acute versus chronic injury management and how that can be handled with the rehab service throughout the school. So we always bring up the point, imagine someone running a 100-yard dash versus a 100-yard hurdle race. Who in that race is going to be faster? Clearly the person running the dash. When we look at this compared to a rehab process, we want to try to eliminate those hurdles to recovery, such as re-injury, compensation through a new injury, or kind of that delay in initial care that these athletes might be seeing. We also want to discuss, or by removing these obstacles, we hope this kind of lead to better results overall in the rehab process, and ultimately get our student athletes back to play and return to play in the safest and most efficient manner.
And I should have prefaced this by saying we're not professionals. So there's going to be a lot of stammering up here at times, so bear with us. Consider these questions. What is an athletic trainer? How can athletic trainers help our student athletes? Have you had a child injured in a game or practice? How was it handled? If you're a coach, how do you manage those situations? How long did it take you to return to sport? How long to see an ortho? Was there a re-injury? Have they dealt with this injury in the past and it just keeps coming back? You're going to see 6 video clips from that ESPN story. It represents a worst case scenario. One of the points that my friend John said, I think you're blaming coaches with the videos. So I want to clear that this is not an indictment of the coaches. This is more to protect them. We don't need to put our coaches into those situations where they have to manage a medical situation. That should be a medical professional to take care of those things. Practice the emergency action plan and have licensed medical providers on site. It's our position that coaches and lay people should not need to be responsible for managing those issues. Let the coaches coach, let the medical providers provide medical attention. My name is Dino Angelopoulos. I'm a certified athletic trainer, strength and conditioning coach. I went to the University of New Hampshire, graduated in 1996 with my bachelor's in kinesiology. And I got certified as a strength and conditioning specialist in 97. While at UNH, I covered football, girls basketball, girls soccer, men's ice hockey, part of my clinical rotations. I am now here at Arnick Health as their athletic training program coordinator. I cover 3 schools. When I first graduated, I worked with the Erie Otters, which is a hockey team in the Ontario Hockey League. I had the number 1 draft pick that year was Joe Thornton. You guys follow hockey, he was drafted by Boston and went to play 25 years in San Jose. That was kind of the level of people that we took care of at that league. My next job was at Brook Academy, which is a small prep school in Maine. Some notable alum from Brook Academy, Charlie Holt, Mike Ruzioni, and probably the most famous alum would be Chris Erickson. If you know Chris Erickson, he's one of the most famous people in my class. Someone shared this video with Chris. From 1998 till now, I've been here. I cover Saranac Lake High School, Lake Placid High School, Sable Valley in the fall, and North Country Community College. I've also had the privilege of traveling with the USA Luge team on little 2 to 4 week junkets, I'll call them. I get the best of it. I get to travel for 4 weeks and then I get to come home. I was able to go to Koenigsegg, Germany, beautiful place. Latvia, I love Latvia. Winterberg, I can go without ever going back there again. While with luge, one of our athletes crashed in a training run about 10 o'clock in the morning, cracked his helmet. I was kind of at the outrun where he came out. Between myself and the EMS that was there, we managed the injury. We spine boarded him, got him to the hospital. We're in Germany. Luckily, my travel manager spoke fluent German. So we get to the hospital. We're speaking to the doctor. Now, Dr. Burns is the medical director for USA Luge, and he's my supervisor physician. So Dr. Burns said, if something happens, you need to call me. So I call him. 10 o'clock in the morning in Germany is, I think, 4 a.m. here. We had a conversation. We managed the injury. We got the athlete back later that night. It goes to show the responsibility that we do have and can have, and how the physicians that supervise us trust our profession, trust our preparation for those issues. I'm also a USA Hockey Level 3 official and a retired coach. When my son stopped playing, I stopped coaching. I tell you that I'm a referee, so you understand that my skin can be relatively thick, and I can deal with aggravation. If you ever want to come to a Can-Am tournament and watch some of the nonsense, it's worth watching the fans versus watching the game.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon Matthews, another certified athletic trainer here at Adirondack Health. So for myself, grew up down in Lake George, so native to the Adirondacks since the age of 8 here. I completed my undergrad over at Quinnipiac University from 2014 to 2017 with a focus in exercise science and psychology. I then entered into the Doctor of Physical Therapy program that year after and found myself a year later wanting to make a career change to athletic training. This was kind of due to just wanting to be more closely involved in athletics and build closely more of a rapport with my athletes. I then moved to Merrimack College in 2019 and graduated from there in 2021 with my Master's of Science in Athletic Training. There it was where I got an extensive clinical education in a variety of different settings. Starting out, I was placed in a public secondary school, Essex Tech North Shore over in Danvers, Mass. I then moved to a private secondary school down in Dedham, Mass, Noble and Greeno School. And then I also worked with Division I programs at Merrimack College, primarily with their men's ice hockey team, a little bit with their men's and women's track and field, as well as their cross-country teams. And then I did also a full-year immersion over at Boston College, where I primarily worked with women's basketball, men's and women's skiing, as well as fencing, which is quite an interesting experience. And then from 2021 on, I moved back home and currently serve as the athletic trainer for Paul Smith College at Tupper Lake Central School. For Paul Smith currently, I do 3 visits per week for about 3 hours a day, and also do their game coverage throughout the year, which includes men's and women's soccer, men's and women's rugby, volleyball, men's and women's ice hockey, as well as men's and women's basketball. And then for Tupper Lake Central School, starting out when I first started in 2021, they had 4 visits per week. This past year, they moved to 2 visits per week. And this upcoming year, they're looking to move to no visits per week and primarily looking to just do game coverage, which is only varsity football.
So it's a good example of how the school budgets are starting to affect decision-making and what we provide and don't provide. We'll get into kind of the bottom line numbers of what does it cost to have an athletic trainer at my school. It's not as much as I think people would think it is. Brandon provides a lot of rehab care at Paul Smith, just 3-hour visits, which is one of those benefits that as an athletic trainer working full time, we can provide that service a little bit better. A little basic intro and some history here. Excuse me. 1993 was the start of the athletic training sports medicine program here at Adirondack Health. Rick Preston, who was the director of sports medicine and rehab department, along with Dr. Brad Stevens, started the program by covering Saranac Lake High School. Saranac Lake High School's booster club paid for the service. The year after, the school board found value in the service, and the school board took over paying and supporting that process. And then I think Lake Placid came in next, and then we kind of grew to where we're at now. Hold on 1 second there. So we grew to have 3 athletic trainers and 6 schools. We had National Sports Academy, which is defunct now, and then we picked up Au Sable to kind of pick that up a little bit. We're now down to 2 full-time athletic trainers and 1 per diem athletic trainer. So a little bit of the trend of what we're trying to deal with and try to get more schools excited and needing, wanting athletic training service at their school.
This is another Bills defender getting. I think it might be Damar Hamlin. Now the Bengals trainers are waving. They're already calling for a card or something. Yeah, that's not good news.
When Bills defensive back Damar Hamlin went into cardiac arrest on Monday Night Football, the key to his survival was the immediate care he received from medical professionals on the field.
The opening video.
External defibrillator restored Damar Hamlin's heartbeat.
But on fields all over the country, that same level of care is not being provided to youth athletes.
I have a young man that is on the ground having trouble breathing.
You assume as a parent that your kids are in good hands and will be given up every opportunity to stay safe. Things can go very wrong.
So what is a certified athletic trainer? We want to emphasize that we are healthcare providers. We're mid-level healthcare professionals, similar to that of an NP, PA, PT, and we are members of the sports medicine team. Very unique thing about the athletic training profession, as you can see from this graphic here, from that time of injury out to the return to performance, an athletic trainer is present throughout that entire process, which differs from, as you can see, physician, physical therapist, strength and conditioning practitioner, where they're there in small snippets. We are able to be there from start to finish that whole entire rehab process.
And it's not just in Kentucky. According to the American Association of Pediatrics, sudden cardiac arrest is the leading cause of death in youth and high school-aged athletes in the U.S. 1 high school student dies from it every 3 days.
An interesting number.
So again, we as healthcare providers follow a medical-based education model. So through our education, we go through classes such as functional clinical anatomy and physiology, kinesiology, biomechanics, clinical orthopedic diagnosis and assessment, therapeutic interventions, cultural competence, sports nutrition, medical imaging, chronic disease prevention. And also, there was a recent change in our athletic training education where the entry-level degree for a profession moved from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree in the fall of 2021.
I do want to bring to light this photo. My friends think I bring water out to the football players. My mom thinks I'm reading x-rays because I'll get x-rays from my parents all the time. Can you tell me what this is? Most of society thinks I'm a personal trainer. My AD thinks I'm just taping ankles. I think I'm solving complex medical mysteries sometimes. And this is kind of in season. Work. Day off, work. But that's what we sign on for. We work under the supervision of a physician. That is indirect, unattended supervision. He doesn't need to be there. They don't need to be there. They know our competency, they know our certification, they know our education. We are their eyes and ears. So when we're at a football game or soccer game, someone gets hurt, basically I'm making a decision that Dr. Byrne wants me to make. If there's an issue, I call him. But I think we undersell that a lot. I think as athletic trainers, we don't push that. And I don't think people realize that that's what we do. I'm there to make that decision.
When my father walked into the hospital, and the first thing he asked me was, where was the AED? I told my dad Matthew had passed away, and he walked in and looked me straight in the eye and said, "Where was the AED?" That was the first time I even thought about it.
Matthew Mangine Sr.'s father, Bob Mangine, is the director of sports medicine for the University of Cincinnati and head athletic trainer for the men's basketball team.
In our conversations, I asked and talked to Matt about had they applied an AED or when did it finally get on. If you don't have it with you, you've got to find that really quick.
AEDs are a life-saving device to shock the heart that goes into an abnormal rhythm or temporarily stops and gets it to beat back into normal rhythm.
Looking at different employment settings that athletic trainers can be employed in. Typically, we see them in the collegiate and professional setting, whether on the sidelines or in the back doing work. Olympic, in the Olympic setting. Recently, Dino and I had the chance to meet Gary Smith while we were at the Miracle on Ice Fantasy Camp. He was the athletic trainer for the 1980 Miracle team here in Lake Placid, and he's still practicing here for his 57th year, I believe, running an outreach program out of Minnesota. The secondary schools, which is our target for tonight, and then the clinical outreach setting as well. That's currently what we do for our athletic training services, and it's hard for us as rural areas. Looking at a physician office, being a physician extender and bridging that gap between an initial physician visit and that formal physical therapy. Looking at different industrial and occupational settings, which is a new emerging setting for athletic trainers. Companies such as FedEx, Amazon, NASA, they're looking to hire athletic trainers to help mitigate the chance of those workplace-related injuries. Looking at the military, over in West Point and Fort Drum, looking at the rigorous kind of training sessions and training loads that these individuals go through on a daily basis. And this can not only affect their combat readiness, but also quality of life. So athletic trainers being present in those settings can definitely help in that sense. Looking at the performing arts, such as dance companies, Broadway, Cirque du Soleil, another emerging setting for athletic trainers, as well as the private sector. Centers such as Total Body Recovery, formerly known as TB12, as well as the McKeely Center out in Massachusetts for sports injury prevention.
So, you know, people compare us, well, and I've had a number of coaches, oh, well, he's our physical trainer. I'm not your physical trainer, I'm your athletic trainer. Well, you give us exercises to do. I said, yeah, I do. I also take care of the injuries that happen on the field and try to help rehab them. A lot of people don't understand that difference, but the biggest difference is the education. We are educated in a medical model. We are mandated to have a master's degree now, and our certification is a unified certification body. Personal trainers may or may not have a college education. There's hundreds of different certifications you can get as a personal trainer. And there is no medical ability with those personal trainers unless they get some sort of additional schooling. Personal trainers are just focus on fitness. Athletic trainers, it's about injury prevention, injury care. Our practice domains, we have 5 of them, and they just changed the name of these. They change them every couple of years to keep us busy. Risk reduction, wellness, and health literacy. It's a mouthful that the NATA likes to throw out at us. Assessment, evaluation, and diagnosis. Critical incident management. This is our emergency action plan or acute care. Therapeutic intervention. This is kind of where we manage our injuries in our rehab, in our athletic training rooms. And then healthcare administration, professional responsibility. So first domain is risk reduction, wellness, and health literacy. Injury prevention programs. We'll talk to our coaches and say, you know, these sports are predisposed to these types of injuries. Rowers, swimmers, volleyball players, they're predisposed to overhead, overuse shoulder injuries. Soccer players, basketball players, a lot of ankle injuries. Track, cross country, a lot of overuse injuries. How can we mitigate those things? So there's some preventative care we can provide for those coaches and those athletes to try to mitigate those issues. Of course, we're going to do some prophylactic taping and bracing. That's what most of us think we do. And if you notice, this is usually what happens when a coach takes an ankle. As long as they can't feel the foot, they can't feel the ankle, we're good to go.
June 16th, 2020. Matthew was at soccer practice running sprints. His mom, Kim, was watching from a nearby parking lot, waiting to drive him home. It was 7:12 p.m.
I remember seeing Matthew drop to the ground. And that's when I noticed a couple of the kids around him start motioning to the coach. So I ran out there, and I've never seen him like that.
I had just started watering the plants in the front yard, and that was when I got the phone call. You know, Kim's in full panic mode. And I said, I'm on my way.
Unbeknownst to teammates and staff, Matthew had gone into cardiac arrest. His coach, Steve Hahn, was 10 feet away.
Dane County 911.
Yes, I would need assistance at St. Henry District High School.
Okay, what's going on?
I have a young man that is on the ground, having trouble breathing. His eyes are a little bit rolled back.
Dr. Stephen Knoll was in the parking lot, waiting to pick up his son after practice.
I saw that someone was on the field. Then I saw, I think, Coach Hahn turn around and look to his left, and he looked alarmed. And at that point, I said, I think I better go check and see what's going on.
Dr. Knoll reached Matthew and started administering CPR. It was roughly 5 minutes since Matthew collapsed.
His color looked grayish. You know, he had not been breathing.
There is an athletic trainer on that campus. He was 300 yards away at a girls' practice, a different soccer practice. The emergency action plan didn't work here. So assessment, evaluation, diagnosis. Got to break it up into two parts. You've got acute on-field, and then you've got chronic care where you're going to deal with it using athletic training. So acute on-field, obviously you're at an event, you're at a game, kid goes down, the coach is worried about the play and work the right play and his players do the right things. I'm watching to make sure that the pig pile gets up and everyone gets up from that football scrum. That's what I'm worried about. I wait for the hit in the corner of a hockey game and play goes up ice, and I'm still watching the corner to make sure that person gets up. Part of that now is being able to react appropriately. So we go on the field, the ice, the court, we evaluate the injury. We look for that life-threatening issue. We look for deformity. We look for bleeding, right? There's nothing life-threatening. Okay, we can move on the assessment. Okay, we can get that person off the ice. We can decide on the course of action and then treat them from there. Whether it's ice, it's a sling, we're the doctor. We kind of figure out where we're going to go after we decide what's happened at that instant. I've dealt with 3 tib-fib fractures in the past 3 years. 2 with soccer, 1 with football. So, like, that's a pretty significant injury. The one of them, I was at a football game. We were at an away game on the other side of the field. So their coaches and their staff got there before I did. EMTs had left because the game went into overtime, so there's no EMS there. There was no splint kit on the sideline. So the EMTs that were there, that was rude. The EMTs that were there stabilized, got his shoe off, looked for pulse, like they did all the right things. But without a splint kit, we waited for EMS to get back to splint this kid. This kid was laying on the ground for 20 minutes before we got a splint on him to get him out. So having the right equipment, that emergency action plan, it's not just catastrophic life-threatening, it's also limb-threatening. So having those things in place, ready to go.
Okay, is he responsive?
Not.
Okay, how old is he?
He is
Is he breathing? Sir, is he breathing?
We need immediate assistance. We do have a gentleman here checking the pulse right at this moment.
Okay, can I speak to somebody else?
My first reaction when listening to the call harkens back to why you rehearse, why you delineate who is going to do what in an emergency.
Are you doing CPR? Sir? Hello? Sir?
The school had 5 AEDs on campus property that day. The closest was about 50 yards away from where Matthew collapsed. But according to depositions, neither Coach Steve Hahn nor athletic trainer Michael Bowling knew that AED was there.
If you use these devices within the first 3 minutes, the chances are 89.6 to 90% survival. So that's why you have them. That's why St. Henry's had them.
The Mangines legal team timed how long it would take to retrieve the AED in the Fine Arts Building and get back to where Matthew collapsed. It took 47 seconds.
How long has he been on the floor for about?
I would say 10 minutes now.
Between the time Matthew went down and the time the ambulance service came, who had the responsibility, Mr. Bowling, to get an AED to Matthew?
Well, the document's what it is. Steve Hahn's in charge.
So does that mean that Steve Hahn had the responsibility to get an AED to Matthew?
It would.
You can answer.
It would have been his responsibility to have someone go get one. I'll say that.
Local sheriff body cams show Matthew did not get an AED administered until 7:24 p.m. after paramedics arrived, 12 minutes after he collapsed.
I titled that Coach Freezes, because that's exactly what happened. And I don't think our coaches should be responsible for acting much different than that. Yes, our coaches are mandated to be CPR trained. So you go to your CPR class once a year, once every 2 years, and then you work wherever you work. You're a businessman, you're a contractor, whatever you do. You're not medical. This isn't his fault. It's the systems. The system's not quite right yet. And this was a conditioning practice. There was no contact. This kid was doing conditioning work.
Going back into the assessment, evaluation, and diagnosis practice domain, going into the chronic and overuse injuries that we more see in the AT room on a day-to-day basis. So it first starts by just examining the athlete. And we always say the examination of the athlete starts as soon as they walk in your room. So how are they presenting themselves? Kind of how are they compared to their day-to-day? And then we go through that as subjective evaluation and get that range of motion testing, manual muscle testing, looking at joint play with special tests. And then from there, we can decide whether rehab is something we can do in the AT room, if there's a need for further rehab, maybe more formal physical therapy, or also if there's a need for more medical imaging to get a closer look at this. Our ultimate goal here is to decrease the chance of those long-term consequences from occurring, whether that be that decreased playing time, long-term injury, psychological exhaustion, because we all know that injury is not only a physical thing, but also a mental hurdle to overcome as well. Once we determine that appropriate course of action, we can then modify and monitor that athlete's practice and game status through our injury tracking and communication with coaches and athletic directors. And we can provide those updates on a day-to-day basis on how they're doing with their rehab and ultimately when they're ready to return to that sport.
One of the obstacles or the hurdles that Brandon brought up earlier, in this situation at my schools, I don't have 3 hours with the kids. I have an hour twice a week. I give them a packet of exercises. Here, do these, come back and see me next Tuesday when I'm here. Practice 50%, I type that up, I send it to the coach. How many high school kids are gonna take that packet and do their exercises? I'm gonna say 10% maybe. That's an obstacle or a hurdle to recover. That person is probably gonna come in with a re-injury in a month, in 6 months, next season. We see it with track and cross country all the time.
Going into our next practice domain, critical incident management. Again, this is our acute emergency care. We want to reemphasize the importance of rehearsing that emergency action plan. As he stated before in that video, this does familiarize all those potential responders with the plan in place so that all of the deficiencies are out of the way before that medical emergency actually does occur. When you look at an athletic trainer, we do have the acute emergency knowledge of that of a first responder and basic EMT. And so we have the ability to triage and direct in those emergency situations. With that comes that role delineation and giving those different responsibilities to the individuals present. So who else is responding to that emergency with you? As they stated, who's responsible for the AED? Who's going to be the one tracking down the EMS? Who's going to be directing EMS on scene? Who's going to be making that phone call? Do they know what to say in that phone call? Have they rehearsed that phone call before? These are all things that the more we practice, the more we can work out those cobwebs and have a smooth and more efficient process in these emergency and catastrophic situations.
You know, part of that is equipment removal. We can rehearse it. We've got together with the athletic training staff from the training center. Once a year we get together, we work on helmet, hockey, primarily hockey equipment removal. But if it's me at a hockey game with 2 coaches and some parents, and I've got to stabilize the neck, who's taking the helmet off? Who's unscrewing the mask? Football's a big one too. It's like if I'm there and it's coaches, unless I'm rehearsing that with the coaches, and the coach knows how to use the appropriate tools to remove that mask and how to take a shirt off and how to cut the pads off, we're spinning our wheels a little bit. So that rehearsal, not only for us to rehearse as athletic trainers, but as athletic trainers managing and assisting our schools to rehearse that with our school coaches.
Paramedics got to Matthew at 7:23 p.m., 11 minutes after he collapsed.
So they're working with him with the machine to keep his pulse going, okay? So they're hooking everything up to him right now.
EMS continued CPR, inserted a breathing tube, and administered an AED, or automated external defibrillator, on Matthew, hoping to restart his heart.
There's a curve, we gotta jump the curve. Ready?
After 9 minutes, they transported him to St. Elizabeth Florence Hospital.
The physician that was right in front of me kind of stopped and turned and said, you know, I'm sorry to tell you that your son has passed away.
So the next part of our intervention is therapeutic intervention. This is our home exercise program. Our modalities: ice, heat, ultrasound, e-stim, manual therapy techniques, soft tissue massage, joint mobilization techniques. You know, sometimes you need to get your hands on your athletes to get some swelling out, to get that joint moving better, release restrictions in muscle belly, things like that. In our situation here, we don't have that capability. Like in our scenario here, you can foam roll. That's, you know, definitely a recommendation we give our kids. But there's more that can be done to assist in the recovery process. These are treatment stats from a friend of mine who works at a Class C school in Central New York. She's a full-time athletic trainer. She works for a hospital outreach. The way we do it here, the school pays us an hourly rate to be here. So if I'm here 2 hours a week for 26 weeks, you know, 26 times whatever, blah, blah, so we charge them that. So our contracts are anywhere from $1,000, Tupper Lake, with only football is the least expensive, all the way up to almost $60,000 with Paul Smith College. this contract, the school pays the hospital 3/4 of her salary. The hospital eats a quarter of her salary in her benefits because it benefits their school and their community. So they're getting great care because she's there 8, 9, 10 hours a day to do the rehab in school. So parents don't need to leave school to bring their kids to physical therapy. The kid's not missing classes. So it benefits everybody by trying to keep the kids in school by having that AT there. So it's not exactly a dollar for dollar thing. So for her treatment stats, she did 472 treatments of cold packs and ice massage. They couldn't just handing out an ice pack. That's almost 20% of her treatments there. Manual therapy, another 18%. She's putting her hands on her athletes to do some soft tissue work or joint mobilizations. Ankle taping is third down the line at 12%. Evaluation, 7%. Now, you might evaluate 100 kids, but you're going to see those 100 kids 5, 6, 10 times. So the treatments are more than the evaluations. And then therapeutic exercise with 6.5%. So 64% of her time was dealt with in those 6 categories. And then there's a number of other things that she did with them. But to me, the manual therapy, evaluation, and Therex are the top of the thing that we can provide the best in school to help these student athletes out the most.
And finally, our last practice domain here, healthcare administration and professional responsibility. For our medical records, we do track our day-to-day interaction with our athletes, and we use those injury reports to relay that information to athletic directors and coaches so they know that athlete status for that particular day. Communication is a huge aspect of our day-to-day jobs. We're communicating with athletes on their injury status, communicating with coaches about their practice status, communicating with parents about injury severity and possible next steps they might take, and also communicating with physicians about possible further evaluation and possible imaging. Looking at our injury tracking, Dino and I, throughout the year, track all of our injuries at all of our schools through Sportswear. Recently this year, we've begun to track different factors of injuries, whether it be contact versus non-contact injuries, acute versus overuse versus chronic injuries. Some stats for us this year, just in the year 2023-2024, between Dino and I, we covered 345 school visits, 196 games, and 2,715 athlete contacts throughout this year. Looking at the development of our emergency action plan, again, having all of those crucial pieces in place, knowing the emergency personnel and designated roles, knowing who's calling the EMS and what to say, knowing that emergency equipment is readily available and someone having access to it, knowing how medical transportation is going to arrive and who's going to be directing them to the scene, and also having those venue-specific directions, there's easy access at each point. As they talked about prior, those development of those injury prevention programs that we can help get out to these coaches to help mitigate some of those non-contact and overuse injuries that we see so much throughout these common seasons. And also looking at our continuing education. Every 2 years, athletic trainers are required to provide 50 hours of continuing ed to the VOC, and it's typically focused on the new evidence within our profession based around things like manual therapy, concussion management, and return to sport testing.
So talking about kind of record keeping and injury statistics, there's a national database, National High School Injury Surveillance Study, that they've reached out to a number of athletic trainers throughout the country, and those athletic trainers report to this organization their injuries that they've had throughout the year, and then they compile this information with, and then report and then release it. This is all on the New York State Public High School Athletic Association website. It's also on the New York State Athletic Trainers Association website. So I just picked out a handful of things: injury rates per sport per 1,000 athlete encounters. So if I've got 10 players, if I've got 11 players on a soccer field, that's 11 athlete encounters. If I'm at a game and it's 2 teams, it's 22 athlete encounters. So it's kind of figure out that 1,000 number of athlete encounters. The average is 2.1 injuries for every 1,000 athlete encounters. That's average. Football is 3.82, so football is the highest. I think that's kind of probably obvious. Wrestling is second, 3.12. Girls soccer, 2.45. Boys lacrosse, 2.42. We don't cover boys lacrosse yet. Girls basketball, 2.28. And girls lacrosse, 2.22. We cover football and girls soccer with a couple of schools. We cover soccer, boys and girls soccer here at Lake Placid, boys and girls soccer at Sable, as far as high school is concerned. In football, it's Saranac Lake, Sable, and Tupper Lake. We don't cover wrestling. I think Peru's got a wrestling team. Sable's got a wrestling team. I think there's one in the North Country that have wrestling. No athletic training coverage for that. If you've ever watched a wrestling event, it's chaos. You can have 8 mats going at the same time. Usually a lot of blood, a lot of bloody noses. The other thing that we didn't mention that we do cover some of the extra stuff we do. We cover rugby here every year. That's worth the price of admission sometimes too. They also track injuries that occur during games versus during practice. Most injuries occur during games. The outlier is track and cross country. Boys and girls track, 68 injuries occur during games or meets, 113 during practice for boys, for girls, 23 during games, 87 during practices. The reason being is that the volume of practice is so high. You might run a 400 meter, that's your event. You might run 4 400s in practice and then another 400s, depending on what you're doing. Never mind the plyometrics you're going to do and any other extra work that the coaches have you doing. So the volume and intensity have to work better together. And that's where, again, part of our job is to collect information and data, give it to our coaches, and give them ideas on how to mitigate those issues. Boys and girls track, the main reason for injuries, their mechanisms of injury, running, jumping, and landing. There's no contact there. It's not a football game or a hockey game. Any non-contact injury is addressable, and we can minimize those risks if we address them appropriately. So here's some possible catastrophic events that have happened in the past 20 years, I think. This first one happened in Rochester, New York this year. As a basketball player who survived a cardiac event, revived by his athletic trainer and their safety officer who was at the school. Basketball player at a game, collapsed during a cardiac event. Good outcome. July 23, football player collapsed during a summer workout. No athletic trainer, guessed it was an AED, did not survive. Again, non-contact. 2019, baseball player running stadiums outside, 92 degrees. He was from Georgia. One of the things we didn't talk about or discuss, things that we're aware of, is the external issues, air temperature, lightning, heat index. For us, it's cold index. Down in Georgia, it's a heat index. At 92 degrees with the humidity is probably, could be up to 100 degrees of a heat index. The recommendation is you don't practice over 96 degrees of heat index. Someone missed something someplace. 2018, football player, conditioning, no AED or CPR was performed. 2017, football player, this is a crazy one. This is a contact one. This is a football coach doing a military workout with his team. He had players carrying a log over their head and running, doing something. And the kid lost his grip, the log fell. did not survive. That's the one contact, but that's, again, if you've got an athletic trainer who might say, hey, coach, I don't think that's a great idea. We shouldn't be doing that. December 2010, baseball player. This was a kid who was catching. He was at like an indoor facility catching, and a thrown ball hit him in the chest, and he passed away due to what's called commotio cordis, which is what Damar Hamlin had. It's when that object strikes you in the chest over the heart at the right time of the heartbeat, at the right electrical impulse, and it stops the heart. That's pretty big for lacrosse also. This is a kid from the North Country who was hit by a batted baseball who passed away. And then this one here is a Long Island lacrosse player. Commotio cordis, died from a blow to the chest. There was no AED for this kid for 12 minutes. Now again, that's 24 years ago. We've become a lot more aware of our emergency action plans in the past 10 years. So again, that's a circumstance where there was no system in place.
Next, we're going to be going into a little map here showing nationally access to athletic trainers throughout the country. It's going to be showing all of the high schools throughout the country. So nationally, it's shown that we have 66% access to an athletic trainer, with 34% of the U.S. not having access to an athletic trainer. In 2018, 2019, for our District 2, which is New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, we had 82% access to an athletic trainer, whereas just 3 years later in 2021, that number has now dropped to 58%. Similar trend seen primarily in New York State. Back in 2019, New York had 66% access to an athletic trainer, yet in 2021, 3 years later, they were down to just 43% throughout the state. And then another map we have coming up here after, it's going to be highlighting all the high schools throughout New York State specifically, and they're either going to be highlighted in a dark green fashion, which is going to signal a part-time athletic trainer. Light green is going to signal full-time. Red is going to mean there's no athletic trainer present, and black means it's unknown.
Houston, we have a problem. Can we pull that map up? Yep. From that website?
Minimize this.
So this is an interactive map that is on the Corey Stringer Institute website. Corey Stringer Institute started up in, I think Corey Stringer passed away in 2001, of heat stroke. Played for the Minnesota Vikings, died of a heat stroke. They started a... We never got those files up. Did you change it on the hard drive? Yeah, we never changed it here. No. Okay. Corey Stringer Institute called every high school in the country, asked them a series of questions about, how many schools, how many kids in your school, how many athletes in your school, and do you have athletic training coverage? Let's see if I can make this work. So this is on a website.
You can use the mouse right there. Yep.
All right, where are you? So Messina High School, 852 students, no athletic training. They have hockey and football. So this is a pretty neat website that you can go on. So red is no athletic training. Dark green is part-time athletic training. That's Saranac Lake High School. 240 students, one part-time athletic trainer. Lake Placid is hidden under this black dot. I'd have to blow that up. So Northwood is the black dot. I'd have to blow that up more to get to Lake Placid. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. My point being, there's our Sable. This whole band in the North Country, most of those schools in red have football, have hockey, no athletic training. What brings our state numbers up so high is probably that cluster right down there in the city in Long Island. Let's see. So what I say, Messina had 850 students. So there's schools throughout the state that have that 700 to 850 number with full-time athletic trainers. So it's not a number of students that's challenging this. It's probably more like awareness than anything else. And so again, that's part of this is like, let's be aware of what's out there and how we can affect that. You want to get me out of here? Thank you, Tim. Oops. So those are the numbers that Brandon gave you earlier. 2018, 19, 82%, down to 58% in the district. And then in the state, 66 to 43%. So there's a gap, there's a hole. So how to hire an athletic trainer? We can do it through the school, directly from the district, and the school employs them. Hospital outreach, that's what we do. There's at least 4 other high school outreach programs in the state that I've communicated with. They all put athletic trainers in the schools full time. So the school pays the clinic X amount of dollars, $40,000 to $50,000. So they kind of pay for the salary, and then the outreach clinic eats the benefits because they know it's good for the community. Physician office outreach would be, any doctor's office. If I work for Dr. Burns' office, and I would do outreach right from his office. Really no difference, just outreach from a different business. BOCES, Matt Wallentuck, who's a Section 7 Executive Director for Sports. He and I have discussed this for a couple of years. He tried to get this proposal last year, and he used the Innovate grant, which is a grant by the Corey Stringer Institute trying to promote athletic training in high schools. Their grant wants you to share an athletic trainer. So you have to have at least 2 schools sharing one athletic trainer for the grant, for them to give you the grant. They give you $180,000 over 3 years to try to build the program, but you need to show sustainability. So I think what happened with Matt last year was he had 4 schools that said, yes, we want to do this. And it was through Beacon Town, Cermak, Central Plattsburgh. And they needed a letter from each school documenting, stating how they were going to provide sustainability. Well, not all the schools got their paperwork in, so it never happened. Now, the way BOCES works, if you do what they call a co-serve or a co-service, if BOCES provides a service to your school, you get reimbursed your state aid. Is that correct, Jeb? Is that kind of how that works, to your knowledge? I think so. Some of it. So if you receive 60%, so like the Beacon Town High School, that beautiful field they've got, they pay 30% of that because they get such great state aid for their service. Lake Placid doesn't have that percentage, but it's probably 50%, maybe 40%. So it's still, an easier manageable cost to absorb. That's the Stringer Institute, the Innovate grant. National average salary for secondary school athletic trainer is $65,000 a year. A school budget, I picked $30 million. That's a low middle number. That is less than 0.25% of the school budget for an athletic trainer. Don't tell me we can't find that kind of money. A lot of states, in the way they organize their athletics, will state we highly recommend athletic trainers at schools. Because if they make it mandatory and the schools can't follow through, the school loses its athletic program. So the states are kind of covering themselves a little bit by saying strongly recommend. New York State does have a 5-year plan in place for having athletic trainers in high schools. I don't remember where that's at this point in time. But over the past 3 years, from 18-19 to 21-22, it hasn't gone well. These are resources and websites. All right, so NISPA, New York State Public High School Athletic Association, they have a 5-year strategic plan from 2022 to 2027 to develop the athletic training program in the state. Go NYSADA, which is the New York State Athletic Trainers Association website. They have a secondary school link. You can find that atlas map there. There's a lot of great resources for parents and coaches on that website. There's the Stringer Institute website. They run out of UConn. Ton of resources there. Kind of describes the Innovate project a little bit. And then the National Athletic Trainers Association, which is our national organization for athletic trainers. And there's a lot of resources out there as far as what is an athletic trainer, how to get athletic trainers in the high schools, different marketing tools, and different things like that. These are all in the packet, so these are QR codes that can get you access to the Atlas map, the NISPA AT Services support documents, New York State Athletic Trainers Association, the Stringer Institute, NATA, and a safe approach to secondary school sports, the last one. They talk about a little bit more, this is from the National Athletic Trainers Association, and they talk about there's some studies out there about how hiring an athletic trainer can be cost effective to school insurances by minimizing those services that get farmed out to physical therapy when not needed.
So in closing here, we want to emphasize that athletic trainers, we are certified healthcare providers that are licensed to provide those medical services. We want to provide that injury prevention education to parents, coaches, and athletes to mitigate the possibility of those injuries, particularly those non-contact and overuse injuries, as many of those can be preventable and avoidable. We want you to understand that we are trained to promptly recognize and treat those emergency injuries before they worsen and minimize the chance of that catastrophic injury becoming worse. And also help manage those injuries efficiently with the optimal recovery, providing that rehab service within the schools and getting away from that stigma that most coaches and athletes have. I think we're the perfect.
As soon as they come in to see us, they think we're taking them out of the game. We just want them to play and be safe and be effective and get to 100%.
And that's the biggest thing, ensuring our athletes' readiness for that safe and most efficient return to sport and ensure their overall health and well-being.
We'd like to thank you for spending your night with us. That's our contact information. If you want to email me, if you want the link to this recorded video, I'll send that to you. I can send you the electronic copy of the PowerPoint presentation if you'd like. Again, we appreciate your time. If you have any questions, let's open it up a little bit if you have any comments or questions. Yeah.
How many AEDs
It's a good question. I did find the one that's in the school tonight. It's up by the office. I know there's one when I cover flag football. We bring one out to the flag football fields. So that's at the we call the dump fields, right? But there's one at the horse show grounds. Usually it's in the shed. I'm sure there's one by the gymnasium. There's a couple in the rink for hockey. I don't know how many are in the school building itself.
I don't know specific numbers, but I know we have them available within medical staff as well as if we have a teacher that teaches the health class, then teacher teaches the students how to use that.
My joke is always when I'm at a sporting event, I'm not worried about the kids, I'm worried about the officials. Have you seen some of the soccer refs and football refs? Knock on wood. Haven't had to use it yet. Any other thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, with, well, just, yeah, I just know with the class of AEDs at the main office and in the gym, and we have 2 or 3 portable ones, so what Neil said, I appreciate it, but so, like you said, you're always looking out for other folks, where's the AED? What's interesting, it's gonna be mandatory for, I think New York State Public Schools, we need to have an emergency action plan in place entering this coming school year, so something will come out. And then I think with teams, you know, it'd be a good team building event, you know, maybe we're not so much concerned about athletes, but like, you know, say a coach or an official, we have to prepare for those situations. I think it's important moving forward to have that preparedness. Yeah, if anybody else wants to expand on that as well, feel free. Just a question for Dino, like you spoke about the Beacon Towns, Plattsburgh's approved, how do they handle the athletic training piece there? Is that just, do they have EMS at the field?
They have EMS at the fields. You know, you go to most hockey games, you go to Rouse's Point to a hockey game, there might not be an EMT there. You know, a lot of times they rely on a doctor, physician, some medical professional to be at the game to be that person to take care of that issue when it happens. I know you're supposed to have medical care at collision sports. So they classify sports, collision, contact, non-contact. So collision is your football, boys hockey, boys lacrosse, because there's deliberate body contact. Contact is girls hockey, girls soccer, girls lacrosse, basketball, because there's incidental contact. Contact happens. And then non-contact, of course, is your track and field, cross country, volleyball, those considered non-contacts. So most emergency action plans revolve around the collision sport. They want to make sure that there's EMS there or a medical provider there. But as we saw in the video, this was a soccer practice that was conditioning. There was no physical contact going on. It was a freak accident. Bronny James happened this year. We didn't even talk about that one. He survived it. He was at USC, UCLA, big, huge Division I college. Like Bob Mangine is the medical director for Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati. They have their own staff. They have the perfect scenario. Damar Hamlin happened in the perfect place because they meet before every contest with visiting team athletic trainers, EMS staff, physicians that are there. This is the plan. This is how we're going to manage it. That's the perfect case scenario. We don't, and again, that happens, how many professional football games or college football games happen in a year compared to how many high school events happen in a year. And there's more coverage at those higher levels than there is at the high school level. That's what I find kind of interesting. John.
Yeah, great presentation. Can really appreciate how you highlighted a lot of work being done behind the scenes in terms of statistics for athlete encounters. I think that's work that doesn't, quite frankly, get recognized enough. So thank you to you guys for working in the community. For athletic trainers at any level, want to touch on the common need in terms of relationships you're trying to build, how you communicate with coaches, athletic directors, and advice you might have for athletic trainers in terms of how they can best advocate in the roles that they're in now in terms of building that relationship. Because I think it's critical in terms of athlete advocacy to have a really strong relationship with the athletic directors and coaches in terms of what your roles are and how you can best implement safety practices.
My goal with this was I wanted more parents and more school administrators. Because talking to ADs and talking to coaches, preaching to the choir. Like it's the decision makers that we have to convince that this is a good thing. It's the right thing to do. The other thing that we didn't mention, but when we communicate with our AD and our coaches, we also communicate with the nurse. The nurse is part of that loop. We don't always call the parents. We could never call every parent we interact with. And so the flow of information goes from us to the AD to the coach, coach to the parent. That's how it should flow. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Jane saw Dino today with her shin splint. He told her she shouldn't practice today or modify practice. This is what we're doing. The ADs have my number, have my email address, and I tell the kids, if you need to have your parents call me, here's my card, have them call me if they've got questions. If I'm here at the school, that's my responsibility. I've got time to do that. As an outreach coordinator, an outreach provider, I have other responsibilities within the clinic that take up a lot of my mornings. So the time component for that piece isn't where it should be, isn't where I'd like it. So to me, I think, and I know every school has their parent meetings and coaches meetings before sports seasons. The last parent meeting I came to Lake Placid was probably 15 years ago, and there was probably this many people there. But getting the parents to understand it's important to come to these things because you're going to learn something. We're going to answer some questions ahead of time. So like that. I think getting parents involved is probably a key to trying to achieve that goal of better outreach and better resources to the student athletes. Some other things that I've talked about before. Go ahead, Alexa.
Can you speculate as to why the numbers have dropped so drastically for AT coverage?
That's an interesting trend that's being questioned by athletic trainers. We think part of it is the fact that they've gone from a bachelor's degree to a master's degree. Programs have closed. I went to the University of New Hampshire. They're no longer a program. So there's 20 athletic trainers not coming into the profession. So I know that there's fewer athletic trainers coming into the profession. That's part of it. It's probably the biggest part of it, actually. It's supply and demand. If the supply is not there, the demand is going up. And that might be why that number's dropped like that. What was I going to say? Had a thought, had a notion, didn't use it. Aiden.
I've heard some talk going around about a summer program with the athletic trainers here.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could touch on that, if it's a thing.
So the athletic development program we're running is two. There's Power, which is a weight room program, and Speed, which is more track and speed agility development program. So that's going to have. So we're doing it here at Lake Placid High School for Lake Placid student athletes, and we're doing it at Saranac Lake High School for their student athletes. So kids don't need to travel. We can do it in-house within the school, within the building. The power piece, the strength, the weight room piece. I only allow 3 kids in per squat rack because a lot of my workouts revolve on using the squat rack and having that device. I allow 3 kids per squat rack. We've got 2 squat racks here, so I'm allowing 6 kids in. Now, if I had 12 kids that want to do it, we'll open up another hour for training. We've been running that kind of program. We ran it, used to run it out of the hospital, out of the medical fitness center. And then before the medical fitness center was there, the USOPC allowed us to use their facility. We used the rink. The rink used to have a weight room. We used their facility. We've been doing it for 15 years. The numbers have been anywhere from 3 kids to probably 15 kids. So yes, that's happening. It starts June 17th. There's flyers. I saw some flyers up here. My number's on it. You can call me. You can email me questions. We can talk about it more if you're interested. And that's part of that is that injury prevention piece. Yes, it's athletic development. We want to make you stronger. Well, the stronger you are, the more resilient you are to injury. Right? It's not just we're not going to just squat and bench press. Like there's a lot of other stuff we're going to do to make you better equipped to manage your body and manage the stresses that sports kind of place on you. Most coaches, we're in the squat rack, we're going to squat, we're going to bench, we're going to deadlift. All right, let's go. We're ready to go. There's a lot more there. And that's where trained professionals should be running those programs. Is my Zoom contingent still there? Are my Zoomers still there?
they're all on mute. They would have to unmute themselves to talk to you.
They could type in a question
Yeah,
they
they
want
can,
to.
no, they have it now with the unmute. Just ask them to unmute, they should be able to talk to you.
They can unmute.
Yep.
All right, Zoom, you want to unmute? See how that works.
Yes, we can still hear you. Great presentation. I can hear my voice now. I appreciate all the input. I think it's even, we hear the budget meeting for Saranac Lake High School, and we think they're working on building, investing millions into a turf, into a field. I know there's grants, but they do these expansions, and yet they're still missing out on the medical coverage portion and the importance of just having an input into those when we pay taxes to these. And it's something I think to myself, why did I go there and actually think about advocating and think about this? So thanks for all the things you got. Great presentation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's amazing. We'll build buildings, build it and they will come. But if we can't support it, we're going to spin our wheels a little bit. Anybody else? Any other comments, questions? For all 8 of us? I appreciate you guys coming. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. Dino, it's Ben here. I just want to, thank you for tonight's, incredible presentation. I think it's just so well rounded. I think you hit the nail on the head with a couple of things too. I think it's continued advocacy for the profession and the community, whether there's 8 or 800 people in attendance, and just continued education, just like we do with our athletes and patients every single day. And it was just a great job. I felt like on your end the entire time, and really kind of painted a good picture of the need for athletic trainers. And I think you touched on this as well. The demand is going up, and where's the supply going? And you kind of touched on it with the degree level change, which has really hit our profession about 4 years ago now. Officially, but it's really something that's affecting it for sure. And there's a lot of school districts out there that want athletic trainers, but can't find them. And there's a lot out there that simply haven't been educated and it hasn't been promoted enough. So I applaud you for reaching out to the community here, and I hope you do more of these here in the future. I think they're fantastic. So thank you.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. I think I'll just run the video and not have to do this live again. Thanks, Ben. That's it. We're going to call it a night. For those of you on Zoom, if you're interested, send me an email and I'll get you the resources. So thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. And thank you guys. Okay, wise guys.